republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 3, be invocation by Commissioner Joe Romano.
Thank you, Chair. You bow your heads. Dear God, please bless our elected officials. Grant them wisdom and courage to do what is right for all citizens. Amen.
Before I ask for a motion to adopt the agenda, Chairman Bob Smith couldn't be here. He had a family emergency he had to attend to. With that, I would ask for a motion to adopt the agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. We're going to wait for Commissioner Drolet. Passes 11-0. Need a motion to approve the minutes dated May 15, 2019. So moved. In support, any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes 11-0. Item number 6, public participation, 5 minutes max per speaker, with issues related only to the agenda. And there'll be a second time to speak after 5 minutes on anything you want. Anyone would like to speak?
Yes, I would, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Please give your name and city for the record.
Very good. My name is Timothy Barkovic. I live in Harrison Township, Michigan. My address is 39801 South Point in Harrison Township. I understand, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, that today for your consideration an agenda item is to a request by that snake, Eric Smith.
Sir, if I can correct, no personal attacks on anybody up here. If I can respectfully ask you not to use anybody's, any personal attacks on any elected officials or employees. You can go ahead and speak.
I would think my right to freedom of speech is at its highest point in terms of criticizing public officials.
You can criticize, please don't call any names.
Okay. Would it be okay to call him the deceptive Mr. Smith, the lying Mr. Smith? Are those acceptable? Those adjectives acceptable?
Please continue.
Okay, very good. Mr. Smith comes before this board through his minion, Joshua Van Lan, who has continually appeared on his behalf relative to freedom of information matters that are now pending and have been pending in the Macomb County Circuit Court. I came before this board several weeks ago, and I told you, ladies and gentlemen, that based upon Eric's conduct in the past, where we had to go to court and have Judge Servito order him to turn over documents, which were eventually ordered to be turned over, that he wouldn't honor any reasonable request for freedom for information under the Freedom of Information Act. And sure enough, that's proven true, because our own very Michigan State Police Department has had to issue search warrants to obtain information from Mr. Smith, who tells all of us, including mouthing off to the press, that he wants to fully cooperate with investigations. Well, if he has to fully cooperate with an investigation, why does the state police have to issue search warrants for his residence and his office to obtain necessary information? I personally had 3 Freedom of Information requests that are outstanding that haven't even been answered by Mr. Smith. And Mr. Smith hasn't even responded, meaning nothing, zero responses. In past filings, he either hasn't responded or actually lied to me in terms of saying that stuff doesn't exist when in fact it exists. I know he's lied. He continues to lie. And that yet he comes before this board with filthy, dirty hands in a deceptive manner and asks for additional funding to hire outside counsel so he can lie and deceive some more. Hasn't this county suffered enough at the hands of Eric Smith? Hasn't this county lost enough through Mr. Eric Smith and the failure of him to cooperate throughout the entire pendency of the proceedings by the county treasurer? Ladies and gentlemen of the board, I strongly suggest that not one penny of county money be given to this man so that he can lie and deceive again. And I thank the board.
Thank you. Any other public speakers? Please give your name and address for the record.
Frank
5 minutes.
Cusimano, 16188 Jenny Drive, Macomb Township, Michigan. I echo the same sentiments, although I will do so in a more, I guess, experiential way that I see things. I am the ghost of Christmas past. As you recall, I represented a former department head who did not think or presented positions which Corporation Counsel said were clearly outside the ambit of the law. I want to tell I'm specifically speaking about agenda item 15E. That's the Maynard case. Judge Ed Servito ruled that the county was the proper party to answer. Eric Smith defaulted for failure to answer. That means it was accepted as true. He has not preserved that issue. So any money spent for purposes of an appeal where he never even moved to set the default aside would be just a waste of taxpayers' money. And furthermore, the only issue appealed currently is whether a public body can be forced to obtain records from a third party, in that case Chemical Bank, which was rendered moot by the judge's order on a discovery subpoena. So on that basis, that appeal will likely fail. It is wasteful spending, just like the checks written from the forfeiture funds for parties, water, and flowers was wasteful and unlawful because it was not for a law enforcement purposes, no matter how broad of a definition you use of law enforcement purpose. I would also like to add that the issue of the county being the proper party and that the department heads are not acting in and of themselves, law unto themselves, I thought was decided through the Karen Springer affair. But apparently all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. MCL 15.236 reads that a county not having an executive form of government, the chairperson of the Board of Commissioners is designated as the FOIA coordinator for the county. Well, that obviously doesn't apply. We have a charter. Subparagraph 2, for all other public bodies, which would be Macomb County, the chief administrative officer of the respective public body is designated the public body's FOIA coordinator. The charter is silent as to who's the FOIA coordinator. Therefore, the statute controls. Injunctive and declaratory relief. I could go on and on about this, but basically the question you have to ask is whether or not these are legitimate claims or defenses that he's wishing to use taxpayer money to defend. It was clear in the Karen Springer's case, according to Corporation Counsel, that she wasn't entitled to representation for violating collective bargaining units and violations of PIRA for unfair labor practices. The question is whether or not FOIA is just as clear, which I think from the statutes that I've just stated, and the decisions by competent courts of law, including one recently in federal court brought by Robert Davis, which is an order entered which finds that Macomb County is the proper county, the proper FOIA administrator, and the proper party to a FOIA request. For all these reasons, as a taxpayer who pays for the operations of the county and my tax bills, I would ask that the Board of Commissioners deny his request for outside legal counsel on those two items, agenda items 15E and 15F. Thank you.
Any other speakers? Anybody else want to speak from public participation? Going once, twice, third time, closing public participation. Correspondence. We have none. Presentations, Great Lake Restoration Initiative Project update by Candace Miller, Public Works Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. I'm delighted to be back here to the County Commission. Every now and then I sort of swing through here and tell you what we're doing in various projects and that, and so I'm appreciative that you give me a few minutes. We're not going to take 5.5 hours like happened yesterday, so Romano said he was already up here removing some of my slides, so I don't know what's left. But anyway, we're going to do our best here. So, I thought I would give you just a quick run through, and I brought with me Jamie Burton, who's the president of HRC, who was the engineering firm that helped us with these 3 Great Lakes Restoration Initiative projects. These are about $9 million, not quite, almost $9 million in projects amongst the 3 of them. That was financed through the Great Lakes, the GLRI projects. And so, you know, every now and then you see at a federal level there's some threat that they're going to defund GLRI, and everybody gets very agitated about that. And there's good reason for that, because these projects have been incredibly impactful throughout the entire Great Lakes Basin. And as some of you might know, I also am delighted to have been appointed. I represent the Speaker of the House, actually. There's 5 commissioners from Michigan that sit on the Great Lakes Commission. And that is a group comprised of the 8 Great Lakes states. Each of the 8 Great Lakes states have 3 to 5 commissioners, and then also the 2 Canadian provinces. And one of our marquee issues for the Great Lakes Commission is making sure that GLRI projects continue to be in the federal budget. So these are very impactful, very important projects. And you all have a copy of our latest, we haven't even actually gone to print on this yet, but when you get a chance you can look through it. This tells you, this fall report, we try to do this a couple times a year, tells you all kinds of various things that are happening in our department, but I'm not talking about all of those today, so look at those at your leisure. But we thought we would just tell you about these 3 projects that, for all practical purposes, are pretty much done, I guess. So Jamie has got the clicker here, and we're going to do a little tag team up here, and I'll narrate if he gets off on some of these things. But anyway, their firm is they do this kind of work and other kinds of engineering work, but all over the state and certainly all over the country. So they did a great. Their folks did a great job. It was a real team effort on this. So, Jamie.
Thank you, Commissioner Miller. Good evening, everyone. Jamie Burton again with Hubbell, Roth & Clark. I'm going to breeze through here. We were reminded by Mr. Romano to speed it along here a little bit. So there's 3. Yeah, he sped me along back in the day in his previous iterations on boards and councils too. So as I presented other similar type projects, so these are, as we mentioned, there's 3 projects really dealing in two large grants, which we'll talk very briefly about. Clinton River Spillway, Partridge Creek or the Glody Drain, and the McBride Drain. These are projects that have a tremendous amount of impact on water quality, but were set up through Great Lakes Restoration Initiative to address habitat degradation in the Clinton River watershed. So when we talk habitat and water quality, it's really kind of one and the same. But these projects, the grant from EPA was a direct funded part of a $20 million package to get address habitat. It's over $6 million, and we got $2.5 million for the Clinton River Spillway from NOAA. So ultimately, as we mentioned, almost $9 million worth of funding. The Spillway project was carried over from NOAA. This is 2 miles of nearshore habitat. It's a really large project, all publicly owned property. Very large scale, very visible, very impactful restoration. And the Inter-County Drain Board, which Commissioner Miller is the chairperson, Macomb representative in on this, the secretary of this particular drain board, we really drove this home to get this grant and then to finish it, the project. Partridge Creek is a partnership with Clinton Township. Clinton Township owns has a great big easement area behind Partridge Creek Mall, which they helped, and we were able to work with them to get that area restored for habitat and water quality purposes. McBride Drain was a project that actually started with Macomb Township. McBride Drain is the most visible of McBride Drain is the large pond behind Township Hall, and they were partnered with Public Works Office to get that pond restored and to work on the habitat project. As these projects start to get complete, there's about 11, 12 projects that are being done. These 3 projects, I'm going to put a marker in the sand, so if anyone's listening from the other projects, we are completing these projects under the original grant amount, or at the original grant amount, have all over-delivered in our outcomes, and we've actually been able to lower our ongoing maintenance costs moving forward. So kind of that triple success is breeding through these projects. A lot of the other projects, I won't mention them by name, but are being administered by other parties or other federal agencies that actually have needed some budget, and they're not done. These projects are almost done. So testament to Commissioner Miller and her staff have really driven these projects home.
Well, I appreciate, I did want to, this is very important, this particular thing, because for us to get additional grants and all these kinds of things, I mean, they look at, I've been on the other side of the aisle. It's accountability, right? It's accountability. So how did you do with some of the money we already gave you? So when they see here that we were under budget or right at budget with a lot of them and exceeded what they were looking for, I'm just telling you, it's very significant for the future. And that is not the norm, quite frankly. So we're very excited about that.
Out of the almost $9 million, the only amount of money that was locally sourced or matched was about $100,000 for the original NOAA Spillway planning and design project that was implemented through the Intercounty Drain Board. The rest of these projects were 100% federally funded. And so again, accountability took all that money and dramatically exceeded our expectations. This is not anything small. This is not building a rain garden, with all due respect. I think rain gardens are fantastic and they serve a great purpose. However, when you talk about 6.2 miles of restoration, almost 90 acres of habitat areas that were restored, created, or enhanced, over 370 acres of invasive control over these projects, and a ton of habitat work being done. This was, for that kind of money, this is a lot of outcome and a lot of improvement. And out of the core, when all the 11 projects are done, these are the biggest of that group. When those projects are done and this habitat is done, we expect the beneficial use impairment designation in the watershed council, in the watershed area, to be lifted. These projects are improving habitat to equivalent, or not pristine, because it's still an urban watershed, but to a high level where we can simply say those use impairments are now removed. It's a pretty tremendous amount of effort. When you boil that down, this slide is the previous slide was little stats. This slide is intentional. Commissioner Miller and I put on here the habitat, the picture in the background, but the text is really about water quality. These are the two interactions between these two items. When you talk about it, the Clinton River and Lake St. Clair, 4,000 less tons of sediment, and everything that goes with that sediment will be reaching the river or reaching Lake St. Clair just because of these projects. 200 less tons of nutrients than will be fertilizers and other nutrients. That's the equivalent. We were trying to figure out the best way to describe it. That's 3 school buses full of fertilizer pulling up to the lake and dumping that fertilizer into lake are now no longer going to Lake St. Clair because of the projects and of the work of the office. We have 9.5 more acres of wetland. Wetlands have been this whole state was wetlands, right? Before we drained it all for everything. Yeah, we got to turn it back sometime, right?
It is again, right?
This
spring.
This spring, it's been wetlands everywhere. Almost 10 acres of brand new acres of wetland, but 74 areas of really degraded area. The area behind Partridge Creek, for example, the drain in the wetland kind of disconnected. So by reconnecting those, we've completely restored the hydrology, the plant life, the habitat and everything, and then the water quality benefits of that project. We created almost 6 acres of habitat areas or more open water areas. We got some pictures of those in a moment. But big things happening here in Macomb related to these projects as far as habitat and dramatically for water quality, especially for the downstream areas, Clinton River and Lake St. Clair.
And our federal partners that finance this, the folks from NOAA and the EPA and, Corps of Engineers, et cetera, they have been out here And in fact, we've got another sort of a wrap-up. We're going to have them all brought out here again. And they're very excited with what has happened here. And again, that's all great. So we feel real good about these 3 projects, but we also are looking to the future because we need more cash. We got a lot of stuff we need to do.
So we're going to speed through some photos, before and after photos now, but we encourage anybody who would like a tour. We give them regularly on all 3 projects. If anyone's interested, we got a lot of things going out there, and we'll gladly take you out from staff from the county, or our office will gladly take you out there and walk you through.
So this slide here with the spillway, and most of you are familiar with what the spillway is, but maybe not all of you. The spillway was actually designed and built by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers back in the late 40s, early 50s. And so it's a man-made thing, and you're going to see now what we've done along the banks that have made it so attractive to habitat and et cetera, et cetera. But the truth is, particularly this year with all this rain, I'm just going to tell you right now, if that spillway was not operating the way that it was designed, we wouldn't be having this nice meeting in this nice dry building. Well, we might because you're on the 9th floor. But I'm telling you, Mount Clemens, honestly, all of Mount Clemens and huge portions of Clinton Township and all of Harrison Township would have been completely underwater, and they were on a regular basis. So this is a working, you probably never could get a permit to do anything like this now, but it works. And there's actually a weir in there. I don't know if any of our slides will show you the weir, but there's an inflatable bladder weir that goes up and down, and of course it's down right now, but because of the high water level. But when the water level gets short, you get short water, whenever that's going to come again in the cycle, you put the weir up, and then you sort of make Mother Nature do what she wants to do going down the Clinton River. So it's really an amazing thing. And we're also, just one thing on that, we are putting together a curriculum, and we are reaching out, an environmental educational curriculum that we are reaching out to the schools. We've had several of these yet, because these young kids now, they never had it back in my day, but now they're very interested in becoming an environmental scientist, or they're just interested in the environment. We got to make sure they understand. And so we've got sort of a living classroom, if you will, that we're utilizing some of these projects for our kids.
So as mentioned, the Clinton River Spillway, it was a flood conveyance project. So restoration of habitat is really not the right word, because it wasn't ever, to restore the Clinton River Spillway would have meant filling it in and making it farm fields. So it's really about taking what Mother Nature's did since the 1950s and enhancing it. So I'm going to go pretty quick through here to speed it along, but the banks had eroded along along a lot of areas. You can see some of the Phragmites. We were able to regrade these areas into habitat pools. So these are offline pools. They generate, the trees in there are intentional for habitat cover and for fish spawning. These are little tidbit. If you guys like perch fishing, the Spillway is a great place. I probably just blew up my whole fishing spot, but great area in these habitat areas. As soon as they were dug, we weren't even excavating out new fish and turtles, and we'll see some of that moving forward. Started moving in. So these are offline. And we have an aerial in a minute where it really shows you how dramatic that change really is. We took the banks and we regraded them, got rid of all that sedimentation and all the stuff coming in. Phragmites, 762 square miles are the Clinton River watershed, and this is down at the downstream end of it. We get a lot of seed and a lot of Phragmites come through, but we were able to manage most of those and control those, and move back the bank and flood out some of those areas of Phragmites. So we got better Phragmite control moving forward, and this is kind of looking down at one of those habitat areas. The trees in there are intentional. The trees in there are anchored to withstand some flood. The sand mounds are intentional. And also some of the, we've collected some debris that's made it to the spillway. They kind of pool up in here. We go collect it and we take it out. So it's a great opportunity to do some of that work. Anglers, fishermen, again, really good perch fishing, especially ice fishing. Trample the banks. Every time you have a trampled bank, you end up having the potential for erosion. Erosion matters. You can see kind of invasives and kind of trash. As part of the project, we kind of took those areas out with vegetation. Maybe I planted a few pricker bushes, maybe I didn't, but we're keeping the fishermen out. But to offset that, because we knew it was a valuable resource, we were able to get one fishing pier installed. And I bet you from the day we put that in there.
Anytime you drive by there, it's amazing. The thing is jammed with fishermen.
Yep.
They say that this has actually become some of the best fishing in anywhere.
Yep.
It's unbelievable.
Couple quick notes about it. It's 100% ADA accessible, which obviously the trails in previous were not. It was built and designed in a modular fashion whereby the communities, Harrison or Clinton Township, could take that. It could get bigger. It's built to be designed kind of like Legos. You can just kind of stack more of them up there. So I think that's a long-lasting design element that people can use moving forward. This is kind of a little bit of a cheat slide because it's during, not a before, but if you look, you can see some of these habitat areas being built on the sides here. They were built in the dry, they were stabilized in the dry, and then we broke the area in between and let them flood in. So we were able to do that work quicker and more cost effectively by doing it that way. You can see the areas pretty dramatically now on the left and the right. So we've kind of taken this perfectly linear thing, we've tried to make it a little bit curvilinear and provide those areas offline for water quality. Kind of some of a couple more after photos. So this is kind of showing those areas. You can see some of the birds and wildlife. This wasn't about aquatic habitat per se. It was also about terrestrial habitat. The birds, turtles, amphibians moving in and out. It's a great area for a lot of different type of resource watching. Here's another area showing the flowers. Kind of the scale there on the right of some of the work that was done. A lot of dirt was moved to get this project complete. This project on the NOAA side is going to be finished this month. And then from the EPA side, it was split funding. EPA side will be finished in the next few months. I'll get to that kind of slide. Partridge Creek, we called this the Partridge Creek Habitat Restoration Project. It's really on the Glody Drain. Partridge Creek was easy because everyone knew where the new Partridge Creek Mall was, but this is in between the mall and the development to the south. It's about a mile long.
Where the old golf course was. We found a ton of golf balls over there.
Yeah, a lot of golf balls. This drain in this area, a little bit more difficult to get to, and you had a lot of areas of bank erosion, as you see here. The banks, the sediment, anything attached to the sediment gets into the water moves downstream, deposits other areas, or degrades water quality. We were able to use a lot of natural features on this. So we used the trees that we removed to get access. We actually shoved them into the banks and anchored them. So the trees provide habitat cover, provide erosion protection from the bank. And as they degrade, they move a little bit, not like rock or sheet pile. They are able to kind of bend and flex with the river. This was taken immediately thereafter, and then a year later, you can see how a lot of that activity just kind of blends in right into the native vegetation. Had some side drains and some, as development occurred, people connected to the drain or they connected upstream of the drain, and you get some areas like this. Again, we're able to kind of seal those areas up, provide them the proper outlet, and use the vegetation to control the bank erosion. In addition, we kind of brought the drain up a little bit, use it with some control structures, which you see down there on the right. That brings the water and the hydrology up, which makes the wetland area more, the water go into the wetland area, it makes the wetland function a lot better. Then a year later. Okay, so we're really kind of growing in and working our way through. A lot of the wooded areas look like this, just muddy banks, no vegetation, no water quality benefit whatsoever. Now we've got a lot of areas like this. We left the roots in, as you see the kind of the tree. Some rock was used, as some to stabilize the areas, and rocks in the bottom of the drain.
Excuse me, Speaker, do you know where this, can you give us the sites where these are at, or do you know where they're at?
Yes. So these. So the photos that we're taking now are as you come in from, the first entrance, the first street to Partridge Creek. Ready? Nordstrom to Carson's.
Yeah.
Going downstream. You're behind there. I'm moving downstream. So this is would be on the west side of the mall in the back, working our way east towards Romeo Plank.
So we've been talking to, Bob Cannon in Clinton Township, but also Moshari, who's building those luxury apartments back in there. I mean, he puts this on as part, he's in his brochures now, Instead of having a fence, he's got it in his brochures.
Yep.
For the, $2,000 a month apartments and that, but yeah. And we're all about quality of life and economic prosperity. And also the, Wendy, we've been talking to Wendy over there at Partridge Creek, who manages that, about, could we, Walmart, et cetera. It would be so nice to have a nice little pathway back in here now. So that'll be the next thing.
If you go to the south end of the mall parking lot and drive along that south end behind the stores, you can see all of this from there now. This was kind of the wetland area in the back of the mall, disconnected from the hydraulics and the hydrology of the water moving through. And now, cranes moved in on almost immediately. You can see it's intentional now that water's been there. High flows where high sediment loads occur from upland areas. Those get trapped in the wetland, settle out, and the water quality moving out the other. The wetlands are natural buffers of all the material. A year later, kind of looking back, one of the elements of this is we did remove some trees, but we planted hundreds of oak trees to they can help take up those nutrients in that water. And we planted them through this with grasses underneath. We call it an oak savanna. But a lot of trees planted out there. They're smaller, but they're going to grow, and they're doing. We got a lot of late bloomers this year, so they looked dead for a little while, but they're looking great now.
After all this rain this year, we thought we were going to lose all these little, but we didn't. Really, I think we only lost a few of them.
Yep.
So, and as the years go on, this oak savanna is going to be out there. It's really going to be very spectacular.
Yep.
But anyway, we got to.
Yeah, I'm going fast. So this is now that area, this was the old golf course. If you played here, this is the hole that went along Partridge Creek in the fall. Looking at the restoration and looking at it now, all greening up in the plants and the trees. A few more after pictures. This is along Romeo Plank. You can see the drain work and the trees planted. Kind of up at that bridge, kind of where the start of the project and habitat. We were out here doing some photos at one point, and we had two deer come right down to the water right behind us.
We cued the deer.
We cued the deer.
We cued the deer.
Brought them right in. McBride Drain, the district extends to the north, but generally speaking, all this work was done in Macomb Township, so kind of the area of the project about 4 miles long. This is what it looked like a lot in backyards. Not doing anything for habitat, and certainly not doing anything for water quality other than moving water. So now we got a lot of areas, same kind of drill, vegetation. The log in the back is a control structure. We used logs where we could to control water elevations and move the energy off the banks. A lot of native plants. In the woods, just had a lot of areas like this. It's pretty rural as you move your way north of this. It gets, having lived right near here before, pretty rural in the woods, but you can see the erosion and things occurring now through the woods. You have nothing but stable banks, working all the way through. Some control areas, you see the rocks kind of in the middle there that we use as control structures back in the woods. It's beautiful back there now.
There's a ton of fish that are going up this drain now, spawning, and there was nothing back there before.
Yep. One big element of this was Macomb Township, the pond that was right outside of Township Hall. It's mostly used for detention and purposes, and you can see the darker green element. It is connected to the drain, but we were saying, what can we do better with this, and can we use that pond to let the critters and the fish and the animals work their way back and forth, and mission accomplished. So thanks to Google Earth, we have a photo of during, so that blank and boring pond. It's got a lot of work done around the perimeter. And now you can see, and I'll show you a photo in a minute, kind of working our way through just the amount of work that was done around this pond for habitat and water quality. Here's an aerial. We're looking backwards a little bit, but now you can directly see the connecting. So these two systems work together for habitat and help promote water quality. As water comes up, it can go into that pond and in and out.
Leon, that pond, you're very familiar with that. There, nothing, I mean, I don't even think there were snapper turtles could live in there. Nothing was in there. Now, if you go by there in the morning, huh?
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's, I mean, beautiful wildlife there. No. And of course, we're talking to Macomb Township again about putting a nice little path around there. And
One element.
one other thing. Yeah, I just was talking to the new person that runs the Clinton Macomb Library for the new library over there. And I was telling him about this, and he goes, we want to do an environmental classroom out there. I'm like, you come to the right place, okay? We're going to partner up with them, which could be great.
Yep. Well, one element of this is we needed access to do these projects. And why pay to put an access in and then pay to remove it when somebody is just going to pay to someday to make it a base for a trail? So we actually talked to the granting agencies and actually left the gravel portion of it there for future use. So that's another big savings for Macomb Township and others. So now the habitat, and this is the area, it's wide open in between these two features, and it's doing the habitat, water quality, it's going great. Go there now, you'll see a lot of structures, a lot of trees, a lot of plants, a lot of mounds for the fish and the turtles. The pond's looking not just like a dead open pond, but now it's actually looking alive. See some of the ducks. So we've talked about these, these are assets of the county. Okay, they're drainage assets, not unlike a storm sewer, road, or sanitary. But we've designed them to be more natural, and they are more natural, and they're going to work a lot better. But they're still serving an urban watershed, and we're working on maintenance plans and what to do to move forward. And Commissioner Miller's office is looking for additional grant funding to continue to assist these and can see these through for the next few years. And we're working on that as we move forward. And these pictures were taken on the project, so it's not just fish and turtles we're talking about here. We're talking butterflies and these projects, turtles. You put a log in, the next day it was a sunny day. Turtles were already on those logs. So we keep working at it. We're working on the warranty, supplemental work. We anticipate these projects being done yet this summer. And with that,
Good job.
that's it.
Thanks, Jamie. So we took a little more time than I thought we would, but we get so excited about all this stuff. So it's cool stuff. It's really, it's long-term stuff. It's legacy stuff for the next generation, really. Yes, yeah, these kinds of things need to be happening all over the county. So we've got a lot of other ideas. But anyway, I just sort of want to give you an update of these three big projects. I mean, $9 million was a significant amount of projects. So any questions or?
With that, if I can have a motion to receive and file by Commissioner Leonetti, supported by Commissioner Lucido. Questions, we have a list here of commissioners. First, Commissioner Joe Romano. Remember, Commissioner, please keep your comment short.
Yeah.
First of all, I owe you an apology. And I do apologize.
Yes, you do, Commissioner Romano.
This was
we'll let
extremely
it pass.
informational, and I'll be the first one to say so. I'm impressed, and believe me, at my age, it takes a lot to impress me. With this extreme amount of rain we had, one of the biggest problems we have had during the summer is the closing of the beaches. And hopefully, this will be somewhat eliminated. You can't control the rain, I understand that. I saw some pictures there of some rainbow trout. That excites me. The fact that you can do some perch fishing in that, that excites me. When the drains fill up and they empty into Lake St. Clair, we still have some type of a filter for them before they go into the lake, the bleach, or is there a bleach that you mentioned?
The only time we treat is at our detention basins, which would be Chapaton at
Right.
9 Mile and Jefferson, or the Martin retention. Other than that, I mean, when it rains, all the storm drains are all going into wherever they're going into, right? That's whether they're an open drain in the northern part of the county or, enclosed drains along Van Dyke, Shaner or whatever. Now, all that stuff goes into wherever you're at, the Sterling Relief Drain, and then into the Clinton River and out into the lake. And so besides contaminants, you've got an incredible amount of sedimentation that's happening, phosphorus, nitrogen, all of these other kinds of things. So we're trying to do in these different drains by controlling that to the best that we can. And up in the agricultural areas where all these open drains are, the farmers use a lot of phosphorus, right? Different kinds of things. So it's all, we're working with the Farm Bureau and trying to do our thing.
I think the best part about this for me, it's 100% federally funded. Just like grants. When I say that, and I'm sure I speak for all the commissioners, when I say that, Candace, they call you the Mother Teresa of Lake St. Clair, and justifiably so. And I know that you've always been a guardian of Lake St. Clair. No, they do. And you've always been a guardian of Lake St. Clair. I know Mr. Leonetti that does a tremendous amount of boating, Mr. Duge who does the same. And I think, again, as I say, I speak for all the commissioners, we truly, and I mean this honestly, we appreciate what you do. Keep our lakes clean, keep our water clean. That's all I have to say. Thank you, sir.
It's all about team, let me tell you. It's all about team. It's all hands on deck, right, to use an old boating term.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Leonetti, again, you have 30 seconds.
Yeah, thanks. I had a question for the Phragmites. How are you getting rid of them now? What's the treatment for those now? Because those have always been a pestilence on the lake. What are we doing for those?
A lot of these projects here some of them were totally full of frags. Some of the other projects that we've been working with, like the Black Creek Marsh, right next to Metro there, that thing was totally full of frags. Now, through the Great Lakes Commission, we had a grant come to HCMA, and they just at the end of last year finished that. Now, if you go back in there, there's a guy in there renting kayaks and canoes and everything. All those frags are gone. So there's different kinds of eradication methods. We've been working with the SISMA group to do what they call cut and drowned. So we've got a couple of different sites that we're going to cut and drown and see if we can do it that way. But they're
Wow,
they're
it was like-
everywhere.
they're everywhere. They were burning them at some
Yeah.
point. There was burns, chemicals, things.
Yeah.
But cut and drown is the technique that you're
we're
doing.
we're not really interested in the chemicals.
No, I agree. That's the question. That's why I wanted to ask the question.
Yeah.
And I'll end it with this. I'll go along with what Romano said. I mean, grants, Romano loves that, right? Under budget, Leon loves that, right? Efficiency and all this nice stuff, me and my Jack like that, right? And these results, I think everybody in the room likes that. So keep it up. And unlike Joe, I would have liked 5 hours of this. I don't know about you folks, but I'd have 5.
I'll come back. I have so many more projects. You're going
Anytime you
to
wanna come
hide
for-
under your desk when you see me coming.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thanks, Candace. Thank
Commissioner
you.
Drolet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for, Rob, for asking about the Phragmites. My question was, can this be maintained? These projects have been completed, and I worry that, 2 years from now, it'll just be a giant mass of Phragmites. I mean,
Yeah.
is there funding or a program or proposal that we can, maintain it?
We are putting that together, but I'm going to let you expand on it.
So, not just the Phragmites are going to be the bane of our existence for a long, long time, okay? We're going to have to continue to manage that. Public Works Office is working on additional grants and partnerships with Six Rivers, partnerships with the SISMA, the programs, and all these folks, with some matching money to continue to do Phragmite control. These projects have a warranty, so there's a few years of control that the contractor is responsible for. Then after that, we're working on maintenance and operation plans, and then each of these have drain districts, so we can leverage some funding for that, but we're looking for those grants. And EPA is committed to some, continue to review. There's after these grant projects, EPA knows the same drill, which is you do this project, then what happens? Everyone kind of goes away from it. They're encouraging ongoing participation, and they're putting some money out there for that. And Commissioners Miller and her staff have gone right to them directly and said, we're ready to do that and move forward. So yes, there is going to be some funding for that, and we're going to continue to work forward with that.
That's when that's why I told you it was so important when we were pointing out that these things are on budget, they're not over budget, and they are exceeding their expectations. Because I'm going to tell you what, when you're looking for money, when they see that, they take you off the bottom of the pile and they put you on the top. I mean, I've been on the other side of the federal table there, so I know what they're looking for, and it's very important.
Commissioner, if it was anyone but you, I'd be frankly skeptical that we could continue this kind of progress and actually follow up and maintain these things. But, immediately after you were elected to be the Public Works Commissioner, you said something to me when we met with you in your office. You said, talking about the overflows, talking about the pollution, talking about the environmental degradation. You said we don't have to live that way. And I walked out thinking, we probably do have to live this way. We've been living this way for decades. It's always worse. There's always more pollution. But, you made a believer out of me. We don't have to live that way. We can make a difference, and you've made a difference.
Here we are, taking aim at CSOs.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Taking aim.
You've, I think, given us hope that we don't have to live with the pollution, or we can raise our expectations, and that we can do better. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Before I move on to the next commissioner, I apologize and bear with me. Director Smeagol is here from Finance, and when Jamie and Candace would switch, he'd poke through in the middle, and I forgot he was still here. And I had told him I would ask the commissioners if anybody needed him to stick around if they had any financial questions, because he had another meeting he had to go to.
Well, I need him here because I need more money.
Is anybody objective letting Director Smeagol?
As long as he leaves $3 million at the podium when he goes, then he's all set.
Steve, thank you, and I apologize. I didn't see you sitting back there. Next on the agenda, next speaker is Commissioner Phil Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question was actually going to be about Phragmites, also a hot topic in my district for sure. So since I don't have a question, I just want to thank Candace for coming to my district today and coming to the chamber luncheon. Thank you, Candace.
Can
Thank
I
you,
tell him
Mr.
what I
Chair.
said?
Sure.
I'll
allow that.
He was the speaker at the Anchor Bay Chamber of Commerce, and I'm there. And after all the Q&A was all over, I had to stand up, and I said, well, I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. He used to work for me. He was just a baby. I said, I'm like the old hen who's here, who watched my little chick fly the coop. And now he's married and's got a regular job. I mean, who knows what's going to happen next? All right.
We've gone down a new hole. Thank you very much for all the information. The Phragmites that's I remember 'em burning them. The question that I have is the maintenance, and you're addressing that. But, question, how much, we've got a ton of water now, and I imagine it's diluting a lot of it. I don't know how deep the spillway is. How much drop in the water until we start having differences of being able to continue on to the lake? Because there are things that come down the spillway, there's things that come down Clinton River in the spring all the time. But it's like 4 or 5 feet over what it should be, or where it is now. If the spillway goes down 5 feet, is that going to affect any of the other drains?
Yeah, I mean, the water levels, I always say the only thing worse than high water is short water, I guess.
Yeah.
So, you know, it does go through its cycles. And in the spillway in particular, as I say, we do have this inflatable weir that is helpful.
How deep is the spillway just,
Right now?
let's say at 94?
Well, I don't even know, huh?
10 to 14 feet.
Right now, with the high water, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's deep.
So if it goes down 5 foot, it's still going to be functioning?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
All right.
But it will have, I mean, you start having those kinds of water levels, that impacts in a whole
Well,
different
'cause
way.
It's going to go up and down. It always has, and it'll continue doing that.
The only one that knows what the levels are going to be is the weather god. And sometimes he won't let us know.
You can complain about the weather all you want, the weather doesn't care.
Right.
2 more things. Army Corps of Engineers, you've got those involved. You've got
Oh,
them
yes.
involved in a lot of this.
They are very involved. They are very involved in a lot of our different projects, and we've been talking to them about trying to get some grants and funding for Chapaton and for some of the other projects at Martin, some of these CSO projects. We are talking to them all the time. We even got them to come in. I think we made a presentation for the IT. Where we thought we were going to spend $2 million when I first came here
Right.
on doing digitization of all of our plans and all of that.
Right.
We now have got a grant through the, we kept knocking it down, getting the numbers. But anyway, that we got a Army Corps of Engineers grant now. They're actually getting, they just signed it. They're going to come in and help us with our digitization.
Cool.
And instead of $2 million, I think our project was, how much? 150,000. So,
Cool.
now too bad Smeagol left. I should ask him for the, we saved
As
this
long as we
money
keep
now.
going.
Isn't it all fungible?
No. Last but not least, zebra mussels and invasive species. Are you seeing problems with zebra mussels on any of the spillways, on any drains or anything else?
We're not. I mean, where you'd probably still continue to see those would be in the water intakes and that. But, I mean, I don't do that, you know. I don't have
Okay.
a water intake, so you'd have to ask a water.
Well, that's
A water
fair enough.
intake guy.
It's
So.
funny that they're all over the place and nobody's talking about them anymore.
Well, you know, one thing I will tell you about the invasive species, sort of, and not to get off topic here, but being on the Great Lakes Commission and having addressed this issue when I was in the Congress.
Right.
The invasive species that come in, whether it's the zebra mussels,
Yeah.
or the round-eye gobies, or all of these different things, they're not coming in from the Great Lakes shipping, right? The Great Lakes boats stay within the Great Lakes Basin.
Right.
They never leave the Great Lakes Basin.
Right.
The ones that bring them in are the salties, of which there are
Yeah.
several hundred of these salties that they come in through the Eisenhower Lock and the St. Lawrence Seaway. That's where
Right.
they come in. And so now what happens is that when they come in, before they come in, they all know the drill now. Before they come in into the basin, they have to discharge a couple hundred,
Right.
a long way offshore. They have to discharge their ballast. If they can't meet, and everyone is inspected now. And so if they can't meet the Coast Guard regulation inspection, they have to seal those their holds, so that they are not discharging while they are within the basin. So, you know, I mean, it seemed like every couple of years we were hearing
Yeah.
about, you don't hear about this anymore.
No,
So,
and
you
that's
know,
why I'm asking.
there's stuff, but I'll tell you, the amount of progress that has been done on invasive species coming into the Great Lakes is extraordinary.
Thank you. Thank
All
you,
right,
Commissioner
thank you.
Druzay. Commissioner Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, Candace, first let me say thank you and your staff for the informative presentations that you're making, not only here,
but at the local level and in social media, we all love grants, federal grants, state grants, wherever the money could come from. But sitting on the Chapter 20 drain, as many of my other fellow commissioners do, we recognize that organizations like SEMSD and the local communities are all part of the team in this project.
Yes.
So we all want grant money, but that's always not going to be the case. So I think the educational information that you're putting out there is being very, very well received by the residents, certainly by the SEMSD members, of which I used to be one. And for those that haven't seen Chapaton Drain and want to talk about spillover into the lakes and how it's being treated and controlled, invite them to go down the 4 floors into the ground and take a look at how it's treated. So congratulations to you and your staff. Wonderful job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Sagar.
Thanks. That's why you're the commissioner, first of all. Second part is all these drains they're talking about on Van Dyke and wherever they are, all going out to St. Clair. And I know you've had pictures and stuff. What's the conditions, the overall conditions of these drains? The big ones, the little ones?
Well, there's so many, right? I mean, there's actually 475 drains that we have jurisdiction over. So this is sort of an interesting number. When I first got here, people said, you know, you've got 900 drains. Oh, I do? Well, where are they? Well, we don't really, well, there's like 700. Well, we don't, anyway, long story short, I said, well, you know, it would be a good idea for us to know how many drains we actually have, and whether they're open or enclosed or whatever. So we just finished with a consulting engineer. We have now a county-wide drain map, and then you can see it online, and you can go into your respective communities online if you want to see St. Clair Shores or Harrison Township, or Macomb Township, or Warren or whatever, and you can pick that out online now, and it'll show you all the drains, okay, in your community. So step one with that. And then, so we have a very comprehensive drain maintenance program, both for open drains and enclosed drains, but we are sort of picking our way through. We've prioritized it the best that we can. We're working with the county match program. We have the locals prioritize their drain projects, and we start with that. We've done a lot in Shelby and Chesterfield and, you know, everywhere. We're all over the place with these things. And we're also doing, like on some of the enclosed ones, like I say, in Sterling Heights, we did, I think, 8 or 9 different enclosed drains. We inspected them. These are run along all the major laterals of Mound, Van Dyke, Shaner, Dodge Park, et cetera. You know, in some areas, we find problems, and when we find them, we fix them. That's our motto there. In other areas, we haven't found big problems, so then we're switching money. We just did that the other night at the Sterling Heights City Council, right? So we had money left over from the drains. I said, I'm not going to move this money out of this drain account till we figure out if we need to do anything there. If we don't, we moved it. We're doing a $750,000 project on Hildebrand, which is a major pump station up by, where is that? Hayes, 19 of Hayes. And anyway, so it's all over the board. Well, we've got big projects in Warren. We're doing something with the Bear Creek. We're under, we've got some engineers looking at that and what we think we might be able to do with that, working closely with the city and TACOM and TARDAC and blah, 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 blah. So there's a lot I'm going to tell you what. We're not bored. I guess I could put it that way. Okay, we got plenty to do. Long time to do it.
When your department has a problem with a drain, do they go down and replace that, or do they put these inserts in there?
It depends. You know, it depends. It just depends on the condition of the drain. I mean, we've got a long drain at 15 and Harper, sort of, in the Clinton Township area that we've had several sinkholes. This is a storm drain, not a sanitary, so a storm drain. So we finally went down and televised it and everything. And what we found is when the guy put it in the late 70s, every concrete section at the joints, I don't know if he didn't seal the parts together or he didn't put any compound in there, whatever, every single joint is leaking all the way along this whole darn thing. So, I mean, it's probably going to be several $100,000 project to fix it. So we're trying to figure out where we're going to get that money. We're talking to Clinton Township because it is in Clinton Township, and it's just problems. old infrastructure that's out there. So, and if you don't fix it, you end up, we've already had a couple of sinkholes along, right where the joints are. So, anyway.
And that red run green looks good. They've been working on that, cleaning it up. And that fence looks great. Thank you.
That's the Marv Sauger fence.
I know it is, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. In closing, a couple of comments. First of all, the Phragmites, I know it's been talked about, a couple of commissioners, and frankly, I believe this issue is above your pay grade and our pay grade. This goes into the state and the federal government, that you can eradicate an area, and within a couple of years, they're back. And this is something that there's no regulations for a piece of property to get developed, and there's Phragmites. They turn it into topsoils, and mom and dad or whoever goes and picks up that topsoil and uses it, you're spreading these Phragmites. And we're putting good money after bad sometimes, and I think the Big Brother needs to step up and help us, because we're spending millions of dollars, even with SISMA and SEMCOG, everybody working to try to stop it. But if there's no regulations, you're never going to stop it, and eventually it's going to come back unless they come back and put rules down of how they can be taken care of. So if there's anything we can do to work with you to try to get the state or the federal government involved, we're on board, because year after year, and you're doing great work, and we're appreciative, but we all know in time they will come back. With that said, on behalf of the board, we're excited every time you guys come up here with something. You're making not only a safe, clean environment of the water and trying to do the right things, it's increasing property values. It's making it a better community for all of us to live in. And I've had the opportunity to see a lot of this firsthand, and I am truly impressed. And keep up the good work, and go after those grants.
We're doing it. We're after them. See how we do.
Thank you. With no other questions, please vote. Passes unanimously. Next item is the introduction of local representatives from Congressman Andy Levin's office. Eleanor and Kyle, you can introduce yourselves to everybody, please.
Oh, sure.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you to the board for having us. My name is Kyle Paulette. I'm an outreach representative for Congressman Andy Levin. I'm joined with my coworker.
I'm Eleanor Gamalski. I'm also an outreach representative.
So the purpose of us coming today, we just kind of wanted to introduce ourselves. Between Eleanor and I, we both are the outreach representatives from Macomb County. Eleanor handles the east side of the district. I handle the west side. And I'm sure all of the commission knows the boundaries of the districts, but for any constituents that might not know, Congressman Levin represents the 9th District, which is a portion of southeast Oakland County. The Macomb County portion is 8 Mile to essentially Hall Road, although we don't have Harrison Township. And we have about the bottom 2/3 of Sterling Heights. So that's roughly the area that Congressman Levin represents. As you know, he was elected into office. This is his first term, and so he started in January along with the staff. And we've been trying to get around the county and meet as many elected officials as possible and to hear what's going on from constituents. Since coming into office, the congressman has met with all 21 municipalities of the district. We did that over the course of about a month and a half, so there was a lot of meetings to be had right at the beginning. Our office is located in Warren. We're at 30500 Van Dyke, which is in the Comerica building, and we find that a good central location to the district, as of course we do have to represent the Oakland County portion as well. Since coming into office, the congressman has hosted 2 town halls. The first one was at Lincoln High School in Warren. We just completed our 2nd town hall in Berkeley, and we'll probably bring the next one back to Macomb County. We've done multiple coffee hours in Macomb, and we are actually going to be hosting another one next Friday in Sterling Heights. So when the office opened, Congressman Levin kind of set out 3 priorities for the office, and these are kind of our goals and what we want to do while the congressman is in office. The first of these is to consistently focus on raising the standard of living for working people and guaranteeing economic justice to constituents in the 9th District, to fight for human and civil rights, and to tackle climate change and promote a green economy that protects Michigan's environment and water. And of course, the 9th District shares a huge portion of the Lake St. Clair waterfront, so that's a huge issue for us. So while these goals have informed the work that we've been doing, the Congressman has been busy in Washington, D.C., introducing several bills, co-sponsoring several others that he feels will help the working men and women in Macomb County. And among those, the very first thing that he did was to reinstate an OSHA rule, which would require businesses of 250 employees or more to report workplace injuries. This is something that's going to help safety standards and just to make sure the federal government can keep an eye on what's going on and get involved if there's any surprises or illnesses that are becoming prevalent. He's also a original co-sponsor of the Jobs Act, which is a bill that, if it became law, would extend Pell Grants to folks who want to go into short-term training programs that lead to a high-paying job. So this is a reskilling opportunity, and you can now, if this becomes law, receive a small grant from the federal government, get your training, and go on to a great career. And another piece in my last portion of this presentation is Congressman Levin, as Vice Chair of the Committee on Education and Labor, worked on the Rebuild America's Schools Act, which is an act that would invest more than $100 billion in America's public schools and create jobs. And the idea behind this bill is to invest in school infrastructure, which is something that we've heard as we've traveled around the county and the district, that our schools are very old, and unless the local taxpayers pick up that burden, there's very little the school districts can do to revamp their infrastructure or build new facilities.
So moving on from some of the jobs and education initiatives that Congressman Levin is working on, in the realm of civil and human rights, we hear a lot from our constituents about voting rights and ensuring fair elections and making it easier to vote. So Congressman Levin was proud to co-sponsor H.R. 1, which was the first package of this Congress, and it's a historic package of several bills that would help ensure democracy and fight corruption in our elections, and he had a bill and an amendment included in that package. In Macomb County, a really big human rights issue is the deportation of Iraqi nationals in the district, many of whom live in Macomb County. In the 9th District, we are actually home to the most Iraqi nationals in the United States, including numerous Chaldean Christians who, you remember, dating back to summer 2017, mass deportations began, which began multiple court battles, and now again they're at immediate risk of deportation. So Congressman Levin has been working really hard on an extremely bipartisan effort, which started with a letter that he wrote with Rep. John Molinar in Midland, who also represents many Iraqi nationals. And now they've introduced a bipartisan bill that would defer the removal of these Iraqis, many of whom have spent very little, if any, time in Iraq. And if they were sent home, especially Chaldean Christians, they would face human rights abuses and potentially death. And so they've been fighting to ensure that these folks have a right to a hearing rather than immediate deportation, as many of these people, when they do stick around, are becoming citizens and are really stand-up people in the 9th District. And then on the environment issues, in May, we sent a letter to the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee that really identified water infrastructure, which we've talked a lot about today, zero net energy buildings, and electric vehicle charging infrastructure as top priorities and potential job creators in the 9th District. The Congressman's really excited to, he's planning to introduce a bill that would establish a network of electric vehicle charging stations across the national highway system, which he imagines as a public-private partnership. So lots of small businesses in the 9th District, a gas station, what have you, could go to auction to have one of these electrical vehicle charging stations there, and it takes about 15 minutes, I think, to charge for hundreds of miles. So what are you going to do while you're sticking around charging your vehicle? You're going to shop and promote the local economy. And then finally, the Chapaton Basin Expansion, which I know you know a lot about from Public Works and have supported. We're working closely with Candace Miller on that, and it's honestly one of his top priorities that he's been working really hard on, and he's made it a personal mission to secure funding for this project. So in April, we wrote a bipartisan letter to the House Appropriations Committee requesting federal dollars for the improvements to the facility, and just yesterday, we successfully passed a provision to an appropriations bill to make funding Chapaton a named priority. So we're really excited about that, and that did pass in the House, and we'll keep working really hard on that. So that's what the Congressman's working on in DC, and meanwhile, we are working hard in constituent services in the district to make sure that residents of the 9th District are being served by their federal agencies. So if you find that residents have issues with postal service, taxes, immigration, Medicare, VA, even nominating graduating seniors to the military academies, getting flags, setting up tours of the Capitol when people are visiting DC, those are all things that we're really excited to help with, and I'd kind of add that part of our mission is having those excellent constituent services and make sure that we're showing up for folks.
Thank you.
So, yep, we just want to thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate the chance to have an introduction.
Thank you. Can we have a motion to receive and file? Motion by Druge, supported by Sauger. Two things for you from me. You heard about our concerns about the Phragmites, and it's a federal thing because we can stop them in Michigan. They'll come in from Ohio and other areas. So that's something we really need him to help us here with. And the second thing, we appreciate the work with the Chapaton project, but you've seen the wonderful work that's being done here, and we'd like to do a lot more. So if you can add a few more projects, go visit Candace Miller, and she'll let you know which ones we need money for. With that, we have Commissioner Rob Majek would like to speak.
Thanks, Eleanor, Kyle. Good to see you guys here today. So, Eleanor, I talked with you over the phone, I think, maybe a few months ago when the Congressman's office did some type of survey. What you just talked about now, the last couple minutes, those are sort of the results of that survey. Is that correct?
Not quite. So
Okay.
those.
I'd just like to know what if you could just tell us what was that survey about and what type of responses did you get from the communities or the public officials?
Sure. So we surveyed all 21 communities on infrastructure needs and got a response from all 21. Okay. It wouldn't surprise you. Everyone has infrastructure needs. So that ranged from roads to water to sewer. And our DC team put together a map of all those projects and an explanation of the funding that was needed and the reason. So that was really assembled into a report to make a case for infrastructure funding as part of the bipartisan energy right now to pass a big infrastructure bill in Congress. So none of that has been particularly earmarked or anything. It's more of a data research project helping us make our case for infrastructure funding. But the things that I mentioned have been specifically requested from appropriations.
Very good.
Yeah.
The Chapaton, I took a tour with Congressman Levin a few months ago with Chapaton, and I'm wondering where Andy is at with that in terms of funding for that. Has he introduced a bill in Congress or a committee in Congress? Do you have anything to report on that?
Yeah, so the Chapaton Basin Expansion, we requested a provision for funding from appropriations that was passed yesterday, and we're continuing to work with Public Works and Senator Stabenow's office on other sources of funding, but it's, on a near daily basis, it's something that the DC team is working on, and we're pretty confident that it will come through.
And the interesting thing on that request for appropriation is I read through the various amendments for the bill that this request went into, and I think it's the only Public Works one in there. And
really?
That's because of our partnership with Commissioner Miller and her expertise on what we need to be asking for. It's a big bill. Everybody's got something in there that they want to get, and that's what we're after.
I was just talking to Karen about that. She said she got a call from folks in Milwaukee asking, how did you get Chapton and specifically in there for funding? So yeah, we're definitely leading the way on that.
Very good. And just a question, comment to you guys. I really appreciate the congressman. I didn't know what his three priorities were, but increasing the standard of living, that hits the nail on the head, the way I see that. Unemployment is, I don't know if the numbers are now 3.5 or 4%. The last time they were at those levels were in the 90s. And I guarantee you that the folks, our constituents, are a lot more nervous in today's economy with a 4% unemployment rate than it was back in the 90s. So that's near and dear to me. And I just read something in the paper that the federal minimum wage has not been increased in 10 years. I hope the congressman would take a look at that, even though Michigan, we have a higher, attempting to get to $12 over 12 years. But in Macomb County, we are hurting with wage increase, and I hope the congressman will take a look at that. It's slow. It's slower than other regions in southeast Michigan, and when your wages are flat and your education or your college education goes up 300% in 20 years, and the cost of healthcare goes up 400% for county government in that time period, that's a really bad recipe right there. And I just say that I see the fear in my voters, my constituents over the years. I've been door knocking since 1994. I see it at the doors today. I see it at the Sterling Heights Memorial Day Parade. And it just gets to the people's quality of life, which is what I'm glad that is the congressman's top concern.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. And I'm glad you brought that up. Congressman Levin is actually an original co-sponsor of the Raise the Wage Act, which is a bill which would raise the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour by 2024. It would gradually increase it between now and 2024. So it's definitely something that he's been active on.
I don't mean, and through the chair, but I don't mean to bring politics in this, but it is politics. Like, this is just something I care deeply about. We have to look out for people in the county. There's haves and there's have-nots in the county. You have 104,000 people in the county that make $12 an hour or less. That's a quality of life issue. I mean, we're praising Candace Miller for all the work she's done on the environment, which is wonderful. But we need to look at our constituents as well. We look at people are doing well or people are not doing well.
Commissioner, if you can wrap it up.
I will.
A couple
That
other
benefits us
commissioners would like to
all.
speak.
Thank you.
You're right. I'm trying. Seeing no other, I'm sorry, is there, Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you. Eleanor, Kyle, good to see you. Thanks for coming. One quick question, and I should know this. What committees is Andy on?
Go ahead.
He's on Education and Labor, which he was excited to be elected the vice chair, which is...
Of both committees or just of labor?
It's one committee.
Okay.
And his subcommittees are, there's a HELP subcommittee, which stands for Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. And he's also on the Higher Ed and Workforce subcommittee. His other committee is Foreign Affairs, and he's on the subcommittee for Latin America and Trade, and also a subcommittee on Asia and non-proliferation.
Okay, great, thank you. And one last thing, I want to thank you very much for his efforts and your efforts with Chapton. Very important for us, very, very much appreciative. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Drollet.
Real quick, how much is the appropriation for Chapton that passed the House yesterday?
I don't know, actually, but
Okay.
I can get back.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. No other questions, please vote. Passed unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 9, appointments. A, Macomb County Solid Waste Committee, executive appointments with the board concurrence, 5 vacancies, 2-year terms to expire May 31st, 2021. Do we have a motion? Motion by Commissioner Brown, supported by Leonetti. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Item number 10, Health and Human Services Committee recommendations. Commissioners, if we can take, if we can have a a motion for, this was waived by committee, and it's the first time you're seeing it, is the purchase of Community Action Chores Service 2019 Ford Transit Cargo Van for $32,341. Is Gary still here? If you can come up in case there's any questions, can I have a motion? Motion by Commissioner Brown, supported by Romano. Are there any questions for Gary? None? Thank you. Please vote. Item 10B, budget amendment for Macomb Community Action, Children and Family Services, Michigan Energy Assistance. Motion by Brown, supported by Leonetti. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passed unanimous as well. Item number 11, Government Oversight Committee recommendation, settlement agreement, Macomb County Court Case number 18-1771-NI. Need a motion? Motion by Leonetti, supported by Myjack. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimous. Item number 12A, purchase military service time. T. Laporte, 58 months. Need a motion? Motion by Romano, supported by Sauger. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. We'll take a voice vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item number 11, Internal Services Committee recommendations. Motion for A, B, C, and D. Motion by Myjack, supported by Haw. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. We'd like to have a separate motion for the 2019-2023 Macomb County Park and Natural Resources Plan presented by Vicki Redd, the Director of Planning and Economic Development. Motion by Myjack, supported by Kraft. And we have Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Real quick, I don't know if you guys are sticking around for public comment, so I want to do this now while Jeff is here. I wanted to congratulate Jeff Schroeder for being the new Deputy Director of Planning and Economic Development. I think you guys made a great choice. Jeff is a great guy, and just wanted to mention that to the board before they ran off, before I could say anything. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other discussions? And congratulations to you. Please vote. Thank you. It passes unanimously, and I'm guessing that's why you were here. Sorry. Thank you. Need a motion for 14B through T by Leonetti, supported by Drolet. Any discussion?
I'm sorry, Chair, where are you going from where to where?
Item number 14B through 14T. Thank you. Please vote. If I can, it passed unanimously. If I can have a motion for 15A only, purchase of a Chevrolet Malibu 17998. Moved by Lucido, supported by Haw. I asked you, there's a reason why, if we can just leave it as is. We're just doing A. Please vote. It passes 10-1. The dissenting vote is Commissioner Carabelli. Now we need a motion for B, C, and D. Moved by Drolet, I'm sorry, by Duge, supported by Haw. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously, 11-0. Can we have a motion for 15E? Prosecutor Independent Legal Counsel Maynard versus County of Macomb, ETAL Court Appeal Case Number 347164. Motion. Can you turn your microphone on first?
In the paperwork, the firm that was being requested was Mark Pizer. I believe that's switched over to
It's Hill and
Clark
Hill is
Hill.
what the board approved from
That's right.
the petitioner the last time.
Okay.
That's what's in front of you today.
As long as I know it's Clark Hill, then I'll make a motion.
Okay, do we have support? Support by Lucido. Any discussion, or if somebody would like to speak to this one?
If I could.
Commissioner Leonetti.
This one here involves an appeal. From my understanding, the prosecutor's requesting independent counsel because of the fact that they were cross-claimed by our corporation counsel. This is a matter that's up at the Court of Appeals right now. The issue that I think is warranted is the fact that the prosecutor is saying, look, I was FOIA'd and I was requested to turn over bank records that I didn't have in my possession, specifically from Chemical Bank. There was a award of attorney fees and costs against the county because those bank records weren't produced. And the prosecutor's position, from what I understand, is, look, we couldn't produce those records at that time, or we didn't have them in our possession at that time. So given that, that could be something that could be challenged, and this may just be me thinking as an attorney, given the fact that this is something that the Court of Appeals might take a look at, and given the fact that there was a conflict in an existing case between the prosecutor and corporation counsel, I might be inclined to give him an attorney for this limited action only on the appeal. That's just my statement.
Well, the way this is that it's a motion for Clark Hill specifically just for this case and this case alone. Commissioner Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I appreciate your clarification, but I don't see anything in front of me that says it's Clark Hill now. Who made that request, and where did that come from?
That request was from our last meeting. Originally in the package, it had another attorney that was originally asked for, and then they came up and asked for that change at the last meeting.
I do remember that because I did point that out to the chairman, that we had changed it to Clark Hill, but our recommendation sheet now says Howard and Howard.
No, that's the original recommendation sheet from when they submitted it.
It's a clerical error.
Oh,
It's a
okay,
clerical error.
I'm not looking for,
No, because the motion.
I just want to make sure we're covering our bases is what I'm,
Okay.
Do you have, is it in the packet, that recommendation sheet?
Yeah, the recommendation sheet originally was for Howard and Howard, and then specifically, before the agenda began, we adopted the agenda and changed it.
okay.
It's not in the packet today.
I just want to make
Clark
sure
Hill.
we're clear.
Okay, it is for Clark Hill, and the petitioner's nodding in affirmative that it is Clark Hill.
And that's the motion language in the system for Clark Hill.
Okay.
That's my motion for Clark
Okay,
Hill,
thank
and from my understanding, and again, sometimes when you have a little bit of understanding, you can be dangerous, but that's the way I see it with this particular matter.
Yeah, are you using the chairman's lines now?
Seeing
You
no
didn't
other,
hear that, did you?
no, I did not. Seeing no other questions, please vote.
This is E only, correct?
Correct.
Yield. I gotta do that.
Passes 8-2. Item number 15F, Prosecutor Independent Legal Counsel, injunctive and declaratory relief. Need a motion? Moved by Brown. Is there support?
Mr. Chair, perhaps we can have somebody from the prosecutor's office talk?
Yeah,
And I'll support it for the purpose of that.
motion by Brown, supported by Leonetti. Sir?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris Trebilcock from Clark Hill. The prosecutor's office asked me to step up and address any questions or issues that you may have regarding this request. When this request was commenced, there was a new piece of litigation filed by Robert Davis, who you all had the pleasure of meeting with a few weeks ago. In the process of that case, because before the Department of the Prosecutor's Office could even appear or was served with the lawsuit, the Corporation Counsel had already negotiated and agreed to a deal with Mr. Davis that would compel the prosecutor's office to turn over public records without any review for exempt material under FOIA. And for those of you who don't know, FOIA includes a list of about 20 different exemptions that all public bodies get to use for various reasons, whether it's public disclosure of private facts, whether it's security measures, whether it would impede a law enforcement investigation, whether it was frank communications before a final decision was made, or any other reasons under state law for what you can exempt material. Attorney-client privilege communication is a classic example. A deal was negotiated without any consultation with the prosecutor's office that would, and an order entered within a week of the case being filed, which I've been practicing for nearly 20 years. I've litigated more cases against Robert Davis than just about anyone, I think, in the state of Michigan. And it's unheard of. Never seen it before. And to have one public body compel another public body to produce records without a proper review under FOIA for exempt material and do whatever proper redactions, if any, are needed is unheard of. It's also unheard of when you're talking about oftentimes the scope of documents that are requested by Mr. Davis, that they be reviewed to not apply and not provide or charge costs. That's also the first time I've had that experience. Now, to make a long story short, Mr. Davis pulled some procedural maneuvers, voluntarily dismissed the claim or tried to, and at the same time filed a federal case, I believe, naming Commissioner Leonetti.
Just as a point of information, it's Leonetti and it's already been dismissed.
Leonetti.
It's already been
Has
dismissed.
the whole case been dismissed?
Dismissed except for count 1. But I've been dismissed from the case I pulled up. Thank you. I was dismissed the next day.
As you should be. To me, my read on it, it's a frivolous lawsuit. It's duplicative. This case, the Davis case, is still pending before Judge Founts because because of all the maneuvering that happened before the prosecutor's office was involved or I appeared on behalf of the prosecutor's office. Mr. Davis couldn't just dismiss the case without an assessment of costs and fees. And Judge Founts requested that we file a brief saying why we should get fees from Mr. Davis, and he should be held liable to pay those fees, primarily Clark Hill's fees. I think demonstrative of the conflict of interest is Mr. Davis still hasn't filed a reply, but Corp Counsel did file a reply objecting to any fees being awarded to us, which is just amazing since it didn't affect county finances at all. It'd be coming from Mr. Davis or his attorney. So on that case, and as it relates to this, I believe this request relates specifically to that lawsuit, it would be to continue to pursue those fees through that with Judge Founts. I think, and I don't have the resolution completely in front of me, so feel free to educate me, is in terms of seeking to clarify, I do think there is an issue in the county that it can be addressed through litigation. I think it could be addressed by this body about FOIA. And as a guy who practices FOIA law and and I think is considered an expert in FOIA, I don't think FOIA has been properly or hasn't been clearly well administered in some instances. And certainly, I think what we have to remember is that FOIA specifically states, that defines a public body. Okay, I'm reading from the statute. A public body includes a county, and then there's what the Corp Counsel always sort of ignored is this next word after it lists county, city, blah, 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 or a department thereof. A public body under FOIA as a department of the county. And so you go further, the statute says, a public body under control of a county shall appoint a FOIA coordinator. So the statute is clear in my mind
Mr. Chairman.
about how
Point of
FOIA.
information? Yes,
Yes.
sir.
We're not discussing here who should or shouldn't be the FOIA coordinator. We spent an hour and a half on that yesterday. Am I correct in that assumption? So I think we need to stay specific to this issue.
Yep, no problem,
Thanks.
completely understood.
Thank you,
Are
Chairman.
you about wrapped up?
Yeah. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I just wanted to clarify in terms of what the only issue remaining in the litigation, in the Davis litigation, is the award of fees. There's no longer a standing issue there will be no judgment from that court saying who a proper FOIA coordinator was. And so I just wanted to address that issue.
Thank you. Commissioner Haw.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Another point of clarification. We just approved Clark Hill about 3 minutes ago. That was specific to that case. Is
In
that
that
a correct
case only.
assumption?
In that case
In that
only.
case only. Okay. To you, sir. If the corporate counsel was acting as the FOIA coordinator, aren't you kind of reaching to say he was acting as the attorney and not the FOIA coordinator? Corporate counsel in this case has been designated as the FOIA coordinator for the county. So when he shows up, is he representing the county as the FOIA coordinator or the attorney? Just your opinion on that.
He's the attorney of counsel. He's the attorney of record for Macomb County.
Also the FOIA coordinator for Macomb County, correct?
Apparently, but although my understanding is at the time there was no published policy under law, the 2014 amendments to FOIA required all public bodies to publish a FOIA summary and to publish that policy and designate a FOIA coordinator. If you didn't do that as a public body, you wouldn't be able to do fee shifting under the statute. My understanding is that that policy was just recently adopted.
I
And so at the
withdraw
time-
question. I just contradicted the previous issue, so I withdraw that question on FOIA coordinator. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Drollet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize, I'm not an attorney. Thank you. Yeah.
Nice.
So do I understand that the only issue remaining in, to be determined is the attorney fees for this case?
That's correct, Your Honor. Or Your Honor. I feel like I'm in court.
So that's the only thing remaining in this, but did we appoint an attorney, who was our attorney in this case?
Well, because of the speed at which things were processing, we had an engagement letter with the prosecutor to establish an attorney-client relationship.
Was that approved by the Board of Commissioners?
To establish an attorney-client relationship? No, that letter wasn't. What the resolution in this resolution would be my understanding would be.
To retroactively approve you as the attorney so you
Approve
can
that
collect the
and
fees?
approve actually getting paid. And so it's one of those cases where Clark Hill, takes on some risk knowing that you have to act immediately. Because if we didn't, and if we said we had to wait for this, that case would already be done, and whatever deals were worked out
I
would
appreciate
already
the
be
fact that
done.
you decided to take on that risk, but the
Yep.
Board of Commissioners did not appoint you to be the attorney, and therefore I don't believe we owe you.
Okay, and I don't think until there's a valid resolution by this body authorizing it, I would agree with that under the county charter. That's absolutely right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Thank you. One more. Commissioner Ligonetti.
Yeah, I have to echo a little bit about what Commissioner Drollet said, but I want to make this clear, because on the agenda, it appears that this was initially going to be an affirmative action, to try to determine who the FOIA coordinator is for the county. And that would be, in a sense, us voting to allow you to bring an action against the county. Now, you're telling us today that's done. That's a done issue now.
What I'd say, yes, and I think my understanding of what the first resolution was because in that case, that was an issue at that case.
That's correct, at the
Who was
time.
the proper person to respond to Robert Davis's FOIA request?
Okay.
And so that was the sole purpose. And it wasn't to go out and start a new lawsuit or file a complaint for declaratory action or anything like that. It was fashioned that way because procedurally, that was the proper way in that lawsuit.
Okay, so that clarifies. So at this point, let me ask you this. You've done work now on this case. You haven't been approved by the board, and that is a real problem.
Yep.
But you've done work. You could argue quantum merit, right?
Correct.
Okay. But that could be against somebody else other than the county.
Yep.
Okay. Do you have a final bill as of today? Because your work should be done.
Yeah, well, assuming we don't have to show up for any more hearings or anything like that, the judge decides things on the briefs, yes, we could provide a final bill. We haven't done that. It's not, in the next week or so, we'd complete June, but until there's a valid contract, until the board approves it, there's nobody to bill. So
Yeah.
without board approval, I'm gonna have a lot of unhappy bosses at me, and it'll affect me at the end of the year, but, you know,
Oh, we all have to do things sometimes. I get it as an
You have
attorney.
to do what you gotta
Sometimes
do.
we do what's called pro bono, right?
Yeah.
You know, I get it. I get
You know?
it. All right. I'm just going to say this as a statement. I'm comfortable now that this isn't going to be some lawsuit against the county to try to figure out who the FOIA coordinator is, because I think that issue's been resolved now. And then we finally have something in writing. If this gentleman worked and he's got some hours that he wants to bill, maybe we give him another time to come back after he submits his proposed bill, and we can address it there. That would be my suggestion, as opposed to voting on it now. That would maybe be the fair thing to do. We can certainly turn him down. He
Point
never
of
had.
information, Mr. Commissioner, if you're asking then the motion makers to withdraw and to table this or postpone it to the next board meeting, is that what you're suggesting?
That would be. I seconded Don Brown's motion. I would
It would be
withdraw.
up to Don Brown if you would like to.
In light of what I've learned today, yes, I'll do that.
I will do
This
the
is
same.
different
So
than
you
what
both
it
have-
was when this came before the board.
Absolutely
last time.
different.
So both of you, the motion maker and seconder, withdrew their motion. Now is there an additional motion you're looking to put out?
I'll move the table this till a day to call the chair.
Tell you what, table to July 18th. That's records and public safety.
All right.
I'm sorry, postpone. I apologize.
Postpone.
It'd be
We'll
postpone
postpone
until-
this to the records of public safety, July 18th.
I'll second that.
We have support by Leonetti.
Point of information, can we get the bill too, please? I'd like to see.
Well-
how much
Well,
it's gonna cost.
I believe that would probably come post haste, just guessing.
Yeah, we certainly would, and just what my ideal hope
Sir?
would be. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought.
Are you good? You're good.
I'm satisfied.
I have Commissioner Leonetti. Commissioner Drolet. I've been saying it all night, I'm sorry.
Elevated me to
Commissioner Drolet.
Leonetti. I'll probably end up supporting this, but I would rather frankly vote on the original motion. We have an attorney come before us say, I don't know how much I want you to pay me, and I was never appointed by you. Can you just approve paying me, and I'll let you know someday how much it was? That's essentially what we have here. He can't tell us how much he believes he's owed. We never hired him, and we're being asked to pay the bill. I would rather just vote no and not postpone it. But I'm willing to go along with postponing it in case there's some other facts that come to light.
No other discussions. This motion is to postpone to the July 18th meeting. The motion passes 10-1 with Commissioner Juze voting no. Item number 17, a resolution 2019, I'm sorry, item number 16, ordinance 2019-01, FY 2020 June year-end fund balance appropriation ordinance. Need a motion? Motion by Myjack, supported by Druge. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Mine disappeared down there. Nope, it disappeared again. Passes 11-0. Item number 17, resolution 2019-3481, resolution to conduct a poll of the electors likely to participate in the November 2019 election. A motion by Drolet, supported by Sauger. Discussion. Commissioner Drolet.
Just the difference from the motion that you see today and the motion that was made and withdrawn yesterday is that the sheriff has been added to this particular motion, and he would have sign off on any language in the poll before it's conducted, along with the 3 members of the Board of Commission that are designated in the motion.
Any other questions? Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Majek.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I mean, we don't have to add my name to it, but I'd like to be a part of the group that takes a look at that, if that's okay.
Well, if I could address that?
Please, please.
Yeah, I had a conversation with Leonetti about that. Any commissioner can interact and weigh in, but we had to have because we're going to end up having to get this done before our next full board meeting, we couldn't have a vote of the full commissioner. It wouldn't be taking place till July. So, yeah, I think Mr. Leonetti, Bob Smith, and Phil would be very interested in any interaction that any commissioner would have.
I just want to make sure that this is done in a fair way, as, you know, non-biased, the best ways we can. We all have, I mean, you know, things like that.
That's the point of having Wickersham have sign off.
Another thing, Liam, I'm just letting you know, I'll support this, but I'm just saying this, when we do, can I speak?
Not really.
Why?
Your name's not on the list.
I thought you already called my name.
No, he was,
I think I stole
he was talking right now, but if he wants to yield the floor, I got
I'm
Commissioner
sorry.
Druge next.
I thought,
No? Was he? Then go ahead. I apologize,
I thought I was on.
Commissioner. I thought it
No
was Leonetti.
problem. I'm
I thought it
almost
was
done.
Commissioner Leonetti. I
I'm sorry,
apologize.
I'm almost done. So this is just through the chair, Leanne. I mean, I want to make sure, again, and we all want this to be fair and not biased, a poll. But at the same time, you know, it is political, okay? And there can be things done out there, a pre-poll poll, meaning political advertising prior to a poll. You know, I'm just letting you know that I don't want to have that happen, okay? I don't want a certain group coming out there either before this poll, a certain group that supports a millage or does not support a millage that comes out prior to a poll that affects that. So that's all I want. I want fairness here. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Druze.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to oppose this. Basically, we've all seen the pictures of the movies of the walls falling in at the jail. The more we put this off, I'm very, very concerned about somebody getting killed there by stuff falling off the walls or anyplace else. I think the idea of some kind of poll or whatever else is nice, but I think it's cutting out of time of letting the sheriff do his job and putting it in front of the people. So if it makes people feel better, that's fine and dandy. But I figure the sheriff can do his job. He knows what it's like at the jail better than anybody here. So unless Commissioner Sauger, possibly. But after everything's said and done, yeah, I know. That's why I'm saying it. I'm very concerned. We're concerned about things happening at the jail. We want answers. We want this. We want that. The sheriff came up and said it straight. I need a new jail. End of story. So if you want to have a poll, have at it. I'm going to vote against having the poll and spending money on that. Let the sheriff do his job and get it in front of the people to make a decision. End of story. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I agree, Rob, 100%. This has to be fairness, and we can't have a pro-group out advocating or an anti-group out advocating. Let it be the wishes of the people. We all have social media, and Commissioner Lucido forwarded us a really nice email that she got last night that I read before going to bed. But from a timing perspective, let's get this clear. This poll is to be completed prior to the July 9th, I believe 18th meeting, so it does not impact timing of anything that's going to take place in the future. That's for the record, and fairness is for the record, and don't get on the Macomb Daily. Not that I'm talking to anybody in particular, advocating one way or another. And it's the same way we talked about it on the language for the election to take place. Fairness, honesty, and impartiality has to be the trait, and let the residents decide. The poll is not going to impact my vote one way or another. I've already predicted to somebody what I think the results are going to be, but it doesn't get any better than the citizens making the decision at a vote of the people. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Sauger.
I just want to say, I think a poll would be valuable, especially, I'm for the jail, but at least when the people will respond to a poll, we get an idea, is it going to be good, or is it not going to be good? We got an idea what to push on, what not to push on, and we can keep the politics out of it by letting them in this poll. You're watching polls right now in that spectacle going on in Washington. Hell, that's 1.5 years from now. But let's do this one here and get an idea of what's going on with the people. Thank you.
Thank you. No other speakers. I just want to add, this idea of a poll came up, and last night, I believe it was last night, early evening, it was suggested that the sheriff was part of it to make sure that this went out and it wasn't slanted one way or the other. And I and the board, we all agreed that this was the right thing to do. That way it's a true poll going out and true results coming back. There's no delay in this process, and it's to be returned back to us prior to that meeting and hopefully not disclosed until that meeting to anybody.
Sure.
And actually maybe ask for it to be delivered that morning of the meeting.
And it to be delivered to the chair of the board.
Okay. With that said, it was a group of bipartisan people that were put on this so that it was to do, get the pulse of how much work maybe the sheriff needs to do and to see where the electric's sitting at. We all know there's going to be a new jail somehow, some way. We have to have a jail. It's our responsibility to provide that. How we get there, maybe this helps us direct that needle of where we need to go. So there's no delay, as somebody mentioned. There's no saying we don't want a jail. This is to help as a tool going forward. So with, Commissioner Don Brown's on there. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Yes, I'm going to vote no. I'm going to vote no because I think it's not, I think it's unnecessary expenditure of taxpayer dollars to be spending $20,000 on a poll. I think we all pretty much know it's going to come back. I'll hold my comment. I'll just say, but people are going to be asked a question without knowing the facts. So most of them are going to say, well, I don't know. What's the condition? They're not going to know. How are they going to make a decision based on information that, do you want to build a new jail? Well, instinctively, they're going to say, well, I'd rather have more roads. I'd rather have better water quality. I'd rather have this, I'd rather have that. So they're probably going to say, maybe not so much. It's going to come back, and that's probably what it's going to say. It's probably not going to be so favorable. I'm just predicting. So it comes back, and then what? We're in the same position. So I just don't think it's prudent for us to. We keep talking about throwing good money after bad at the jail. Well, here's $20,000 down the bad again. I just don't think it's worth the taxpayers' money to. I've been getting feedback for what the people's opinions are on this jail, and they don't know all the facts, but I'm still hearing it, and they're going to be the same people answering the poll when it's called. And I just think we're kidding ourselves thinking this poll is going to give us any information that we don't already know. So, anyway, that's thank you.
Commissioner Sauger.
I just got one quick comment. The 13 of us up here will either help sell this jail or not sell it. Amen.
With that, please vote.
Yes is for the poll, no is for not.
Correct. Passes 8-3 with Druje, Brown, and Lucido voting no. Next item, 17B, Resolution 2019-3400, resolution urging Congress to support the Excellence of Mental Health and Addiction Treatment Expansion Act. We have a motion. Motion by Hawes, supported by Kraft. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. this the new one? Passes 10-1 with Commissioner Drollet voting no. Proclamations A and B by Commissioner Drollet, supported by Duje. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Item number 19, course.
Second. Is it possible to invite ex-Commissioner Flynn to a meeting so she can get her proclamation? I think that would be a good move.
Commissioner Kraft?
Just a comment on that. She was invited to come today, but she had an appointment that she couldn't miss. It was requested that I present it to her at the Community Mental Health Board meeting next Wednesday at 6 o'clock here, which you're all more than welcome to attend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Commissioner Druse, the answer is no. Item number 19A, Public Works Newsletter, motion to receive and file by Leonetti, supported by Haw. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Item number 20, any new business? Any new business? Seeing none. Item number 21, public participation. You have 5 minutes max per speaker on any subject. Anybody from the public wish to speak? Seeing none, closing public participation. Motion to adjourn by Commissioner Druse, supported by Commissioner Sauger. Please vote. Meeting is adjourned.